G'day, everyone. Welcome to another Toon Podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's biggest and highest ranked podcast for all things Newcastle United. Tonight, we are discussing the big Arsenal game on the weekend, second versus third. And to do that, I'm joined by Dimi, my fellow Victorian. How are you, my friend?
Pretty good, mate. Trying to keep dry. I didn't have a hit of tennis tonight, which was unfortunate. It was shocking weather here in Melbourne this evening and really all day. So it's been a bit nasty outside, but can't wait to talk about this game. It's a massive game, and hopefully we can do over the Gunners again, just as we did last year. And instead of ruining their Champions League hopes, maybe we'll ruin their title hopes.
Yes. So the Arsenal game, it is a 4:30 kickoff in the UK, which is live on Sky. Eddie's Sky Sports Mags are back on deck again. It's nearly the graveyard shift here, 1:30 on a Monday morning AM, which is pretty stinky. But to talk about the Arsenal game, we're joined by Scott from It's a Football Thing podcast. He's based in Sydney. Scott, how are you tonight, my friend?
Yeah, doing well. It's always funny to hear someone from Melbourne complaining about the weather. It's like, what do you expect, man? It's part and parcel. But no, look, doing well. Obviously, a bit of a bumpy stage in the season for Arsenal, but mate, always happy to embarrass Chelsea a little bit. I'm sure we can all agree on that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, you would have had the alarm set early this morning for the 5 a.m. kickoff, the Arsenal-Chelsea game. I suppose, yeah, like you said, it is funny. We can all laugh at Chelsea of how
that's right
shit they've been at the moment.
Just laugh at Lampard, really.
Yeah.
just keep laughing at that.
Yeah.
His record is one of a kind.
Yeah. We all thought Steve Bruce was bad, and then you see Frank Lampard's record, and he actually makes Bruce look like Guardiola. Like, it's actually frightening how bad he is. Yeah. How was it? Are they as bad as their results suggest?
Yeah, look, they're pretty dreadful, but to be fair, they kind of shaped up a little bit. They started to push a bit more late in the second half. They were much more impressive than the first. The first half, they were shambolic. And look, something's not right there. You just look at that club, and one of the boys on the podcast, one of the co-hosts, RJ's big Chelsea fan. I've had radio silence from him all day, but even like lifelong fans just can't get their heads around what's going on at that club. It's almost the opposite of our two clubs, boys, where there's a culture that seems to be right at the moment, and everyone's thriving in that. Everyone's confident. You go into games looking forward to it. They're the complete opposite of where our two clubs are at the moment, and it's funny to imagine that they're doing that after dropping 600 million or whatever it was. It's just mental.
It's frightening. But it's the old saying, isn't it? A champion team will always beat a team of champions. So, look, we could all laugh and hang shit on Chelsea all night, but yeah, we'll move on to other things. I suppose we'll get dive into your life a little bit, Scott. Your Arsenal connection and things like that. How did you come to be an Aussie supporting Arsenal? How did that all come about?
I didn't really have a choice. I mean, it was a family thing. I've got a Maltese background. Anyone who's ever been to Malta, it's almost like there's an invisible line down the middle of the country. You either watch Italian football, watch Italian TV, like Italian food, or English football, English TV, English food. My grandfather happened to fall on the English side of the island, was a giant Gunners fan, and put that into me, like quite young. He taught me to love the club. He'd always make time to watch the club with me when we could. And then I've managed to go over and watch them a few times. I've watched them play, God, it's 4 countries now, and hopefully growing. I'd like to see them in a couple more. It's been a whirlwind, man. I've enjoyed some really good moments as an Arsenal fan. Seen them tour down under, which was a highlight. But there's also been some pretty dark ones as well, some dark times. The end of the Wenger era, the fan infighting, missing Champions League for so long. But yeah, it's been a journey, but one that I owe to my grandfather.
Yeah. I wish we could complain about a journey that bad, Dimi. Imagine them dark times. I still have to wear my glasses. The dark times would be that bright. So when you were sort of growing up and you're following the club and that, who's been your favourite player over the journey?
No one for me, I think, will ever eclipse Thierry Henry. To me, just one of the most complete footballers I've seen. The skill, the ego, the arrogance. I love the fact that at every point of the game, he thought he was better than who he was up against, and he could take a game by the scruff of the neck. Like, that separated him for me. He could do it all. Not the greatest in the air. That was probably his one weakness, but with feet that good, why waste energy jumping? Like, he was just a magician, absolute magician for me.
Yeah, and even during that era as well, it's not like they were get it out wide and cross it in like with who they had, like Freddie Lundberg and Petit and all that. Yeah, Perez, all them players like that. Even Bergkamp to an extent, like they were exactly the same type of player. They loved the ball at their feet, made them talk and pass and move, and that whole sort of the way they played was very sort of complementary to each other because they all sort of like doing that as well. So hopefully you might see our new version of Thierry Henry, Dimi. We have made some. I made a comparison. I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago that Isak, is it Isak or Isak? Could we noted that?
I think it's Isak with I as in my brown eye.
Pupil. Your pupil.
So Isaac, pupil. Yes.
Yeah. So I made the comparison because I used to love Thierry Henry as well. One of my favourite Premier League goals was like one against Man United when he had his back to goal and he flicks it and sort of and volleys it over his shoulder and Schmeichel sort of just stands there like, what the hell was going on there? So I reckon that it probably is my favourite non-Newcastle goal in the Premier League that I've ever seen. So I did like Thierry Henry growing up watching him play as well, and I think with Isak as well, I see a lot of similarities in the way he plays to how Thierry Henry played as well. He loves the ball at his feet. He loves running at defenders. He's sort of got the long frame and the skinny legs and stuff like that. And his heading's also not probably his strongest attribute with, especially the size. I think, how big is he, Dimi? Is he 6'3" or 6'4"? Yeah.
Isaac's 6'4". He's 6'4". He's a big boy.
Yeah. So, you think, well, a lot of our taller players, you think they'd be a real threat from set pieces, which is the complete opposite because none of them can head the ball. But,
still young, though. I mean, he's still got time to develop that skill, whereas Henry kind of came into it a bit later. Like, he'd done his development. He knew what he was good at. He's still got time. I like Isak.
Yeah. Well, he's just turned 23, hasn't he, Dimi? I'm pretty sure his birthday was at the start of the year. So, yeah. And I think I did read some kind of comparisons that Henry come into the Premier League maybe 1 or 2 years later than what Isak had anyway. So he has got
Henry already. Scott will know better than us, but Henry probably not made a name for himself, but he was always a big name coming through at Monaco and coming through in France, and he was sort of the next big thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, remember, you've got to remember, we signed him from Juve, where he was playing out on the wing, but Arsene Wenger, who had an eye, like for all his faults, he had an eye for some real talent. He saw this guy as a striker and he wanted him there. He persuaded him, and the rest is history. But I think you've got to kind of be careful with Isak as well. Like, you don't want to kind of do what Manchester United fans are doing with Anthony Martial, because I'm sure we can agree on that. We probably all hate that lot.
Yeah.
They were telling us that Martial was the reincarnation of Henry for a long time, putting unnecessary pressure on him.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, there's something there with Isak, and I think he's in a good place for that to continue developing.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time, and I think, if you can get him to be even half as good as Henry was, you've bagged yourself a player. That's sure.
Yeah. I don't think it wasn't more he's going to be the next Thierry Henry, just some of the way his attributes and the way he played, you're like, I can see a little bit of Thierry Henry here, which is a frightening thing because, obviously he's one of the greatest players to ever play in the Premier League. Anyway, Scott, we'll move on, I guess, to the Arsenal side of the season. How have you what's your views on the season so far, and how have you sort of thought about it as an Arsenal fan?
I think you've got to kind of look at it two ways. I mean, ultimately, I'll put it on the table now, I don't think we win the Premier League. I think we did a lot of damage in those 3 games, the Liverpool, Southampton, West Ham. I think it was lost there. Moving forward on that judgment, I would say, a disappointing end to the season. Because if it's in your hands at a later point of the season, you're going to be disappointed not to win it. I know Man City are a different beast. We all know that, but it was in our hands, and it stopped being in our hands against West Ham, Southampton, and Liverpool on the back of a 2-0 lead. So disappointment. There's a tinge of disappointment, but when I step back and look at the season as a whole, my minimum expectation for this year was to qualify for the Champions League. And on our show, I said, I don't care how we do it, whether it's top 4 or winning the Europa. We've done it already, and we've got into a title battle, and I've seen a lot of personal growth in some players who I'd almost written off. So when I look at the season as a whole, I'm quite proud of the season so far. But when I look at this last section of the season, man, it's tinged with disappointment, tinged with it. And I don't know about bottle jobs. I don't think that's the right term. But certainly buckled under pressure, I would say that. And that's the next step for us.
Yeah. See, that I always wrestle with that, Scott, because like it's hard. Like you'd have every fan of every club will have an expectation at the start of the year of where they'd like their club to go. And Dimi, we've spoken about it. Most of us Newcastle fans will probably, after a top 10 finish, not worry about relegation and maybe a cup run. I think that was sort of the general consensus through most of the fan base, what they'd be happy with this season. But when you spend, look, for us, for example, most of the season in the top 4, and if for some reason we bottled it, as Scott would say, or buckled, sorry, not bottled, we buckled the last few games and we miss out, we end up in Europa League, I'd nearly feel as if that's a failure of a season. Like I know, you do have your expectations at the start of the year, but you can vary them after what you've seen a body of work and go, oh, you know what, we're not actually, we're a bit better than a top 10 side now. So let's aim a bit higher. And then I don't think you can come back and go, oh, well, you know, we were going to be happy with a top 10 finish at the start of the year. I think you can sort of adjust and sort of float on your expectations and what you think was going to happen. So, well, I'm sure you'd be the same, mate. If we missed out on Champions League, I reckon you'd be a bit devo, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think it's right because you got a taste of it, and similar to what Scott and Arsenal fans are feeling. And like I was saying before the show, I've got a lot of Arsenal fans in the family and a lot of good mates who follow Arsenal, and they're all saying the same thing. Look, the start of the season, you take Champions League and you'd be happy with 4th or however you make Champions League. But when you get so close and when you can see the finish line and you're that close, it would hurt. And probably in the cold, hard light of day, maybe it doesn't hurt as much. But obviously right now for Arsenal fans, and touch wood, it doesn't happen with us. But if we were to buckle, it would definitely hurt and it would sting, especially because you've been there for the whole season. Your expectations can change, and it's right to change your expectations. You don't want to set the bar too low if you get on a good run or something happens and there's an opportunity there. And I'm sure Arsenal didn't start the season thinking we're going to be challenging Manchester City for the title, but things happen. You get in good form and you alter your expectations, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And for me, I don't want us to drop now. Like I don't want to be losing multiple games between now and the end of the season, because we're better than that, and that would tell me that they kind of gave up and checked out. I want them to fight for every stage, and you boys watch enough Premier League to know no one has a divine right to do anything in this league. This is, for me, the most competitive, most difficult league in the world. There are no easy trips, as Southampton and West Ham showed us. There are no easy games.
Yeah.
You're fighting for a place in the Premier League, the richest league in the world. You're going to fight to the death. We've just seen Leeds bring in Allardyce in a desperate roll of the dice. It is. There's no divine right in this league, and anything could happen to any of our clubs. But I think looking at how both of us have fared, which is probably above what our minimum expectation was, you have to then also hold a certain standard. For me, we've got to stay in the fight till the very last match. And for you, I would be bitterly disappointed as a Newcastle fan if you don't hold top 4, because you're doing all the right things. It would take a catastrophic slip to lose it.
Yeah, and that's why I think that the expectation should be adjusted. Like if we don't get it, you can't at the end and go, oh yeah, well, I was happy with the top 10 at the start. I don't think it works like that anymore. I think you should be disappointed if you sort of get through to a point and go, you know what, I thought we were going to be there, but you just miss out. But even on Arsenal, so you mentioned them sort of Southampton, West Ham, and Liverpool draws, which, like you said, effectively probably have cost you the chance to win it all. What happened? Was it a injury? Like, did you get a few injuries? Was it form? Was it a few games and you didn't quite have that squad depth to sort of have the quality to rotate like a Man City do? What happened in them 3 games?
I hate blaming injuries. I hate blaming injuries outside of something like catastrophic with like 6 defenders or doing ACLs or something. But we didn't have anything catastrophic. We lost Tomiyasu. If you go into a season relying on him to play the full thing, that's naive and stupid. We then lost William Saliba, who was playing really good football. The partnership between him and Gabriel Magalhaes was one that kept us a lot more sturdy. Losing Saliba, you bring Rob Holding in, who quality-wise is not at the level to be in a title-challenging team, but also, to be fair to him, he hadn't had 20 games, 30 games prior to build chemistry and be involved in actual matches with the team. It's a lot different training with the squad than playing with the squad. So it was a lot of depth. And unfortunately for us, there is with Arsenal lots of growth, but there's also a naive aspect to how we do some business. We have awful trouble selling players. It's always loans or installments of, 20 pence for 58 years. It's ridiculous the way we sell. And then,
so why is that, Scott?
Mate, I wish I could tell you. Is it
the asking price is too high when a buying club comes in, or what is that?
I think it's a little bit of that. It's also the fact that we have been quite generous in the past in terms of contracts with some players who maybe haven't deserved them. I mean, I use Eddie Nketiah as a prime example. Hadn't been good enough to be our second choice striker. Had one good purple patch at the end of last season when his contract was about to expire. We gave him Thierry Henry's number. We gave him 6 figures on his contract and signed him up. Like, that to me is naive. Arsenal spent, 30-something million on Fabio Vieira. Mate, I would happily see you boys suiting up in the middle of the park rather than Fabio Vieira for us. Like, with that 30 million on him, do you buy 2 more experienced older players? For example, a Jorginho, who we got for 12 million, great business, and build your depth. Have guys who are experienced, who know the league. I just think it's that. We just didn't use the funds we had wisely enough to build a squad. We built a team, and that team has got us here, which is brilliant. Now for next season, thinking ahead, we need to not build a team. We've got that. We need to build a squad because we'll have Champions League football to contend with.
Yeah, so that's actually funny. That was my next question. What do you think you need to do to take the next step for next year? But I think we're in a similar boat, aren't we, Dimi?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, we're probably not at the same level in terms of the quality of our first 11. Obviously, the team as a whole is performing probably greater than the sum of its parts. I think that's the saying. So individually, we probably still. I'll go with it.
Yeah.
Individually, we still need to probably improve on a couple of the first 11 players. But Scott's right. If we do make Champions League as well, we're going to need to improve the depth and significantly as well. And that's where it's going to take a smart football director or a smart scout team to find the right fits for European football, which is going to be completely different to Premier League football, which it is different to Premier League football, but also to find enough experience in your squad so when the games come thick and fast, or there's big pressure moments like there is at this time of the season, or there's a cup final, or there's a two-legged game that you're playing in, you need to have those solid, experienced professionals who just know how to get the job done. And that takes time to build that, but you have to somehow balance the fact that you want to get the perfect starting 11, maybe 2 or 3 off the bench, but you have to balance that fact to have enough off the bench to get you through a full, not 38 game season. With Champions League and Cup games, it's 55, probably 60 games.
Yeah. We hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope. Yeah, exactly.
So that's it. I think So I think I can see. I know only one position obviously separates us on the table, but points that you probably obviously got a few more points than what we do. But I think our needs are very similar in terms of a squad. Like we both need to sort of fatten up our squads a little bit with a bit more quality. But I think, especially for us, and Scott, I probably think you guys would be the same a little bit, that it's fine to bring in players, but I think when you go into a major European competition like this, I think you can't discount that Champions League experience as well. Like you do have a few of them old heads who can be on the pitch and just, I guess, control things a little bit more. Like I'd imagine if we do make it, that the first game at home, the first 20 minutes will be like chooks with our head cuts, like chooks with our head cuts. I can't even say that. I'm not even going to try and say it anymore. But you just need that old head out there. Like obviously we've got Kieran Trippier, but I think that's about it. Who've had Champions League experience. So I think it's going to be important to get a few more of them old heads in there just to sort of get control of the game and the occasion and things like that, and try and keep guys on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, 100%. I think both our teams, again, like I've said, both on a similar trajectory, both kind of on a similar journey. We've both got young managers who have probably outperformed their expectations. We've both got really good starting teams. We've got some leaders. I would probably say we've got a tiny bit more leadership in our starting 11 than you guys. I think a lot of yours falls onto Trippier, whereas we've kind of got Xhaka in there. We've got Zinchenko in there. Ødegaard is our captain as well. So I think we're probably edging you a bit in the leadership, but you're exciting as well. And I think you're absolutely right. You need a squad if you're going to make a run in the Champions League. And I would love to see both our clubs make a run in the Champions League. I couldn't even imagine St. James's Park on a Champions League night playing. Don't mess it up, boys. I have a soft spot for Newcastle. I like Newcastle. Don't mess it up. I'd rather you there than a lot of other clubs behind.
Oh, yeah. And I think as well, yeah, so do we. But even you got to, like, you want to make sure you've got cover and that experience for the Champions League, but at the same time, you can't take your eye off the Premier League. That's your bread and butter, and you still got to perform. Like we've seen a few teams this year sort of stumble in the Premier League, and it is part of that, the European stuff that's going on as well. Like I think of West Ham, Liverpool to an extent, Chelsea as well, where their Premier League form has sort of really dropped off with the European stuff, because I mean, a lot of them have had similar squads, same managers and things like that. Yep. So, well, maybe not Chelsea. They've gone through a couple already. But, So I think it's important just to keep your eye on the ball and remember where your bread's buttered too. With regards to Arsenal, who's been your player of the season? I think you guys have got 5 games left as well, the same as us now. It's probably a fair amount of games to make a judgment on that.
Yeah, I think so. And it would be hard to go past Bukayo Saka. I think that he's just been electric. Even coming back from the World Cup, his form has just been tops. I would have a couple of honourable mentions, though. Granit Xhaka, bit of a redemption arc for me. He's a player who I was adamant at the end of last season. I wanted him gone. I didn't care what Roma offered. I wanted him out. But he's really stood up. He's tried to, and mainly has eliminated that stupidity and aggressiveness from his game that gets him into trouble. I've seen him lead without an armband, and he's been Mr. Consistent. He's played practically every match. So it would be Saka with honourable mentions to Granit Xhaka and Martin Ødegaard as well. Captain, he's been brilliant, the captain.
Yeah. Do you think, with regards to Saka, do you think that World Cup sort of elevated him a little bit more, where he got to play on that bigger stage and he's sort of got more confident in himself to say, yeah, hey, I can hang with the big boys now. Like I am that guy.
I think so. And I mean, look, you asked Arsenal fans about Bukayo Saka. We were singing his praises anyway.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. He wasn't like a potato before the World Cup, but
he earned respect from the footballing community, because you'd always have these conversations around Foden and Rashford and Bellingham, but no one would want to talk about Saka or didn't feel he was kind of worthy of being in that circle. I even say, people talking about Jadon Sancho. in those conversations. But I think he kind of stood up and showed the whole world, particularly with how he bounced back from the Euros and that whole kerfuffle at the end. He showed that he's a player, and he seems very well respected by his England teammates as well. And I think his reputation is going to continue to rise because he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's not, he's the kind of character you want around your club.
Yeah, and even with the Euros, he wasn't obviously. Dimi, I don't know about you. Probably followed. I don't know if Greece made it or not, but I did take it. I sort of follow England in the European competitions because, all my sort of dad's side of the family live over there and stuff like that. So I do have a connection, sort of to him. And I thought his Euros were really good, and I find it kind of frustrating that one sort of incident sort of overshadows his whole tournament. It's a really unfair thing. At the end of the day, they're a lottery. It's anything can happen, and I think you learn more about a player over the course of a tournament rather than a one isolated incident. And I just find it unfair that not just him, Harry Kane's copped it as well for some of his misses for England too. And it's not fair. I know it's like a big moment and things like that, but it's part of it's pot luck. I know there is a bit of a sort of method to a penalty and things like that, and the gamesmanship and all that, but it is luck at the end of the day. You might absolutely flush one and the keeper might get a fingertip on it and push it onto the post. And we can't do anything about it. He shouldn't be tarnished. Tarnished might not be the right word, but he shouldn't be sort of hung shit on because of one incident when his actual whole tournament was really, really good.
Mate, couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got an Arsenal team here. I'll just bring that up now. Now, I believe this was the team that played this morning, Scott. Do you want to go through that quickly for our sort of viewers and our audio listeners as well?
Yeah, it was pretty close to this morning's team. Trossard started in place of Martinelli this morning, and Jorginho started in place of Thomas Partey this morning. So I've put both those guys back into the starting lineup. This is the team that I think Arteta goes with.
Yeah.
If it was up to me, it would be a little bit different. But Gabriel, it's going to come down to whether or not he's fit, because he did come off late in the game with a bit of a hamstring strain. He was struggling a little bit in the last 15 minutes. I don't know why we kept him on for so long, but I'm actually thinking he won't be there. So if Gabriel is not there, you're looking at a centre-back pairing of Jakub Kiwior, who was really good this morning, and then Rob Holding. Now, if Rob Holding's there, again, good bloke, loyal, works his backside off, but hasn't had, the time to gel with the way we play, and also isn't quite up to the technical level required for these kinds of matches. So that's certainly a weakness. Ben White will start. Zinchenko is, set in stone for Mikel Arteta. And then you've got Martinelli and Saka on the wings, Erdegaard pulling the strings of the attack, with Gabby Jesus and Xhaka and Thomas Partey behind. That's what I'm expecting to see.
Dimi, I'll come to you first, mate. What's your concerns with this lineup? What are you worried about?
Oh, it's got to be probably the wingers. I remember the game at the Emirates. Saka did have some early joy against Big Dan Burn, but I think Burn recovered half decently, and it wasn't a complete shit show for the rest of the 90 minutes. But I think that has to be probably the concern, that the quick transitions or counter attacks with Saka and Martinelli. I think that our midfield probably stacks up decently. Our midfield stacks up decently with most teams, and obviously if they're defensive, Gabriel doesn't play, I'm not too concerned about scoring against that back four. Arsenal have been leaking goals lately. I mean, they conceded 3 goals against Southampton lately. West Ham scored a couple, so not too concerned about the back four. It's probably the wingers that would probably keep me up at night, or keep Eddie up at night, trying to work out how we're going to curtail them.
Scott, is that you sort of echo them thoughts?
Yeah, mate. Look, our goals come from out wide. We don't have, Jesus isn't a kind of target man who you're going to drill him aerial crosses for all game. If we're going to find joy against you, it's going to come through Saka or Martinelli. If Martinelli doesn't start, you've got Trossard there who's equally dangerous. So I'm happy with whoever starts on that left. But you've also got to be mindful, I guess, if I was Eddie Howe, I wouldn't just be thinking about Saka and Martinelli. I'd be thinking about Zinchenko and Ben White, because Ben White and Saka have superb chemistry. The overlapping and the way they find each other in the tightest of spaces, that's something you'll need to worry about. No, I'm confident about them up against Dan Burn. So I think we'll be okay on that side. Zinchenko, brilliant attacker. Defensively has been at fault for many goals. He's going to invert himself. This is how we've had so much success. He is going to shift into the middle, which is going to leave you a lot of space down that left-hand side. I see you scoring in this game. I don't see us keeping a clean sheet. And I think you're going to find joy if you attack Zinchenko down that side, because if he's in position, which is rare defensively, he's not the world's greatest defender. But Zinchenko and Rob Holding, that's the side I'm attacking if I'm Eddie Howe.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'll bring our team up. Dimi, if you want to, do you want me to go through that, mate, or you want to go through it?
Yeah, so we had obviously the back fours speaks for themselves. I think Burn has bought himself another couple of weeks. Not that he was awful for this season, he's been fantastic, but had a bit of a blip against Aston Villa, but he's bought himself another couple of weeks since then. So the back four will be as usual: Burn, Botman, Share, Trippier, Popey in goals. The midfield's going to be the question for me. We're not too sure as it stands now if Longy's going to play. If Longstaff plays, I think we could see a shift. Obviously, Longstaff comes in if he's fit. I think then Joe Linton will go out to the left, and potentially Isak would start up front, and maybe Wilson would drop to the bench. That's what I'm thinking. But assuming Longstaff doesn't play, I've gone with Joe Linton, Willock, and Bruno in the middle, with Isak on the left, with Callum Wilson finally to start their first game together. And I've gone with Murphy at right wing. It's not with confidence, but I just think that, again, Eddie, we know Eddie well. He doesn't change winning teams. Miggy has had a fantastic season. Obviously, he's been out injured and back on the bench of late, but probably Murphy deserves his starting position at least for the first half against the Gunners.
Yeah, for sure. And he's done nothing wrong, has he, to warrant being dropped and for Miggy to come back in the side. But I'm really fascinated as to how this is going to play out for us anyway, because like you said, there's so many different ways that this could fall, which could completely shift the way we play and how we set up and things like that. And who would have thought, oh man, not even like 6 months ago, Sean Longstaff could just really change everything of the way that Newcastle set up. It's actually you could have paid anyone any amount of money to come up and actually believe them when they said that. Even with Isak and Wilson or Isak and Wilson, like, it's just, do you play them together? There's a punch coming off the bench. Like, do you lose that sort of punch coming off the bench if you need to change things up, whether it's to win the game or just protect the game? If Isak comes off and Wilson plays you more of a traditional number 9 where hold the ball up, draw a foul, get us back up the pitch a little bit more, like, do you lose that? I've been sort of contemplating it all week of how to do it. I'd probably start him off again. I know it's really, really harsh, but I'd start him on the bench again, because I feel it's working well. And he's scored a brace the last 2 games he's come off the bench, and it seems an absolutely preposterous thing to say to start him after another brace, and probably pulled us out the shit against Southampton. Not probably, he definitely did pull us out the shit against Southampton. But I just think we sort of lose the ability to change things if we need to later on in the game.
Well, you're right there. There's nothing wrong with being an impact player off the bench. It's actually a very important position, and all the great teams over the years, all around world football, have had that impact player off the bench. I don't want to mention they call it the Teddy Sheringham. I don't want to mention any Man United player, but that's sort of the role
Solskjaer as well, but yeah.
Solskjaer, that's sort of the role that you talk about. Off the bench, half an hour, 25 minutes, impact, score, and do it again. It's harsh on Wilson. I mean, he's got to be thinking,
Yeah.
geez, I'm playing 35 to 45 minutes a week. I'm scoring basically a goal, at least a goal, if not 2 goals per 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And I can't get a start. It's harsh on him, but as long as you got the buy-in from Wilson, it doesn't throw a spanner in the works. And obviously we're getting the results. So Eddie can turn back and say, look, we're winning games. It's working. Why change what's working? So it is a conundrum, and who knows how Eddie's going to go. I will just love to see, for once, us start that way. And look, if it doesn't work, you can take one of them off, or you can mix it up and change it in the second half. But it just seems to me Isak is showing a lot of signs being a more natural wide player than he's a natural centre forward. He loves dribbling. He loves getting on the ball, and similar to, obviously, Henry was a striker in terms of the Henry comparison, but Henry did also come from the flanks in, and he loved picking the ball up wide and dribbling in, cutting in, shooting. So Isak seems to have a good connection with Wilson, so that could be a spanner in the works for Arsenal to worry about.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think two blokes competing for the same position wouldn't look for each other, but it's
Hate
a
each other's
complete
guts, yes.
Yeah, they actually purposely look for each other, and they've actually assisted a lot of each other's goals as well, which is good. But it's interesting that when you bring up sort of the second half and things like that, I was doing a bit of digging tonight after work, and got a couple of interesting stats here that 22% of Newcastle's goals this season have come after the 75th minute. So that does show with our fitness and things like that we do run out games. And do we lose that if Wilson starts the whole game and then we don't get that punch off, that scoring threat off the bench as well? But on the other side, Arsenal have conceded 28% of their goals between the 60th minute and the 75th minute. So there is sort of, when you sort of look at them together, there is an opportunity for us to sort of get at them and hit the score sheet in the second half. I think that first half is going to could decide the game, really, because, I mean, if Arsenal get on top and get some goals and we don't score, I mean, it's going to be hard to come back. Conversely, if we can hold firm and maybe pinch one in the first half, there's every chance we're going to win the game, given when we score and stuff like that. And I think it was similar to that first game at the Emirates, I think, from memory. I mean, the first part of the first half, we did a lot of defending and we sort of held firm. I remember even our group chat, the first 20 minutes, we're like, oh, shit, this is going to be a bloodbath. And Saka was running riot and like, how are we going to get out of this? But we sort of got a foot in the game a little bit and sort of got control a little and got out of it with a 0-0. But it could, I did read that it's the first time, this could be the first time that Newcastle have kept 2 clean sheets against Arsenal the same year since 85, 86. So they've never done that. And that was in Division 1. So it hasn't happened for a long time if it does happen. And I don't think they've gone unbeaten since Arsenal, since 2010, 2011, I think it was the last time that
usually
Arsenal
enjoy playing you.
Yeah, Arsenal failed to beat Newcastle in a season. So there is, having said all that, so you think Arsenal can win by getting down the flanks, Scott, and sort of getting at Burn and Trippier to an extent? Dimi, I'll ask you, mate, how can Newcastle win this game?
It's a great question. I think where we're going to get on top of Arsenal, I think, is going to be our intense sort of pressing that we have done to many teams at home. And obviously it's going to be a massive game for Arsenal, but it's a massive game for us as well. It's going to be a heaving crowd. I think Arsenal's not the most experienced team to come to St. James's Park. We're not playing in Manchester City who have been there, done that. We're playing a team who's still got a lot of young players who are not learning, but young players sort of growing into this sort of position at the top of the table. So I think a good early press from us and sort of getting the crowd on side could really rattle Arsenal. And obviously we all know what happened at the end of last season when we knocked them over 2-0 and sort of ended Arsenal's Champions League hopes. So that could be in the back of the mind of the Gunner players. And if we start well, maybe, like you said, pinch a goal or at least be level early at half time, it might really start to play in the minds of the Arsenal players. And I think with the crowd factor, I think it's going to be a massive factor for us to get the chocolates on Sunday night.
Yeah. It's going to be a blockbuster. I know it's easy to say, and it's a sort of easy thing with the second versus third, but the way that both teams play, and with us at home, we are a different beast at home with the crowd behind us. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the game, and it could go a long way to shape our Champions League hopes as well. I think we've sort of worked out 7 points from our last 5 games will guarantee it. Assuming that Liverpool win all their games, most of us think that Liverpool are the biggest threat to the top 4. We're happy with 4th. It's not really, you don't have to do the qualification stuff anymore. So 4th gets you in automatically, which I mean we'll all be happy with 4th. So yeah, I mean if we can manage to win this one, I mean we've only got to beat Leicester and Leeds and get a draw out of is it Brighton and Chelsea, one of them games. So yeah, it is a massive game for us. If we can manage to pull off the win, I reckon it'd just about be there. It's Leeds the next week, isn't it?
Yeah, Leeds next week, and then a couple of home games, I think, and then we're
Brighton's the midweeker thrown in.
Leicester. I think Leicester, Brighton, and then we finish with the
Chelsea game. Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be a massive game. Before we finish, Scott, we like to get a score prediction from each person on the podcast. So, being the guest, we'll give you the honours to go first.
Dare say mine will be a little bit different to yours, boys. I'm expecting goals. I'm expecting a lot of goals. I think you're going to try and press us really aggressively, and it's going to be how we respond to that, because I have seen us play some really intricate passing to play ourselves out of a press and hit teams on the counter. And that's what, I'm thinking we're capable of doing. But if we can control possession and make our team defend as little as possible, I think we can do something here. But ultimately, the injury to Gabriel, if he's out, I think makes us just too vulnerable. I'm actually going for 2-2 draw. I think both teams score. I think a draw is where I'm seeing this going.
Dimi?
Yeah, so different result, but similar thinking to Scott. I think both teams are going to score. I think it's going to be a really good game. It's not going to be one of those dire 0-0 defensive sort of rubbish football games. Both teams want to express themselves and play at a high intensity, and obviously both teams are desperate for the 3 points. Probably Arsenal potentially more so than us in terms of them chasing City, but obviously we're pushing for as many points as quickly as we can to get our top 4 hopes secured. So I think it's going to be a humdinger, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory. I'm going to say it's going to be 1-1 at halftime, and then we're going to bring Callum Wilson off the bench. Actually, I've said he started. Or scratch that. Someone's going to come off the bench. Miggy's going to come off the bench and score. No, I'll go 2-1. I'll go 2-1 Newcastle. I think I'll stick with that. But I'll go with Miggy Almiron to score the winner off the bench.
Yeah, right. I'm actually with you, Scott. I was thinking a Desmond as well. I just think we're scoring freely in our last few games, but we haven't kept a clean sheet for a few weeks as well. So I do think that we do have that lapse and an error against sort of teams who haven't been as great. I mean, like Everton aren't great, and we let them score from a corner and things like that. So we do have that sort of error in us, but against a better team, I think we'll get punished a bit more than what Everton do. They're pretty shit, to be honest. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they went down after watching 90 minutes of that shit. I couldn't imagine watching it for 33 games so far. But yeah, I'm with you, mate. I'm going to go for a Desmond 2-2. Yeah, I think there's going to be goals in it, but I think we'll sort of cancel each other out with our attack and your attack.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just the way I see it going. But before we leave, mate, do you want to give your podcast a plug as well while we're on?
Yeah, sure. The channel's called It's a Football Thing. If you go on YouTube and search IFT Pod, you'll be able to find the channel. We go live every Monday evening our time, Monday morning UK time. It's myself, a Chelsea fan and a Manchester United fan. So three long-term mates just trying to make sense of this Premier League and put a bit of shit in each other, basically. So, yeah, feel free to jump over. We've got a few Newcastle fans in the chat all the time who give us a bit of support. So we'd love to see some more in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you listen to that, you want to sort of Premier League wrap up from three Aussie blokes who love talking shit about it, and they won't make any sense of it because that is an impossible task to make sense of the English Premier League on a weekly basis. There's bad shit going on and weird shit going on everywhere. Sort of, it's probably a bit late now, but if you haven't made it this far on the video, give us a like and comment on YouTube, on your podcast provider as well. Leave a review. That really helps us as well. We're still trying to figure out the whole algorithm stuff, probably like you are, Scott, how to get ourselves out there more and get more people engaged with us and the channel and things like that. Check us out on all the socials, Toon Under Pod or at Toon Under Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. But that just about wraps us up. Dimi, thanks for your time tonight, guy.
Cheers, mate.
Scott, it's been a pleasure having you, mate. Really appreciate you jumping on after a early start. We know how long them days can be when you get up early, but they are made a little bit better with a win and the opportunity to trawl through content during the day, which puts a smile on your face, which is it's always good and does make the day go a bit quicker. So once again, mate, thanks again for your time. I appreciate you jumping on and giving us your views from an Arsenal side.
Pleasure, mate. Always nice to link up. Hopefully we can get you boys on the channel at some point too and have a bit of a yarn.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Absolutely. We'd be up for that. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll be back Monday night for a review. Hopefully it's a super positive one for us anyway about the Arsenal game and our push for an unlikely but deserved Champions League spot next year. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time. See ya.